What if I told you that just one podcast interview, just one, could get your name, your message, and your magic in front of hundreds or even thousands of your ideal patients, and you didn't have to spend a dime on ads or dancing on some crazy reel? There's no funnel, you don't need a big following, and you don't need a big fancy PowerPoint. All you need is to have a message, a myth, or something that you can talk about on someone else's podcast. It's one of the most overlooked marketing strategies there is. So if you think you're not big enough or you're not ready, think again, because today I'm going to show you how to find the right podcast, how to pitch yourself with confidence, and how to build your business one podcast episode at a time. Welcome to the Clinical Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm Rhonda, your no-fluff, tell it like it is business bestie for wellness practitioners just like you who want to build a practice you love and make a bigger impact and a little money while you're at it. So if you're ready to ditch the overwhelm, attract your dream, ideal patients, and finally run your practice with complete confidence, you're in the right place. Each week, we're tackling things from programs to patient retention to marketing strategies that actually work, sprinkled, of course, with a little sass, a lot of heart, and the step-by-step strategies that will help you get there. So grab your cup of coffee, your notebook, or whatever keeps you going, and let's build a practice you love and a life you love together. I'm so glad you're here today. I'm excited to share this topic with you. I kind of hinted at it last week in the episode that I had another kind of secret, super cool marketing tip for you. And today we are going to talk about you being a guest on a podcast. Now, it's probably not even crossed your mind. And I know some of you have been on my podcast, and I know almost every time when I reach out to someone, they're like, oh gosh, thank you so much. But you could be that person too. There's hundreds, thousands, millions of podcasts, and you want to find the podcast of people that have your audience. And here's why. It doesn't do any good for you to have a message that you want to share with the world if you are getting on a podcast full of plumbers. That's not going to solve any problem, right? You're not going to get any new people because it's the wrong podcast for you. But when you think about getting on a podcast, I get it. You're probably going, no, I can't do that. That's not going to work. Well, here's the thing. I've had a podcast now, this podcast, I think we're in year 3 or close to it. And I can tell you that I get pitched for podcasts all the time. People that want to tell me about their, business strategy for this. The email that I get doesn't have anything in it that makes me think, oh, that's interesting. I would really like to know more about that. And I want to share that with all of you practitioners. So for you as a practitioner, my podcast is not the right podcast because if we're trying to get new patients for you, my podcast is full of other people like you, right? Practitioners. We need to find a podcast for you where you can get on that has an audience full of women that are struggling with Hashimoto's. And you happen to be a thyroid expert and you happen to have a very unique opinion about Hashimoto's, right? So you could talk about protomorphogens, you could talk about Epstein-Barr, you could talk about mono, you could talk about stealth pathogens. Like there's lots of things that in our world, I should say, that a lot of people don't know about. It's just kind of news to them. So by the time we're done with this episode, I want you to know that you being a guest on a podcast is absolutely possible. It is 100% possible. I'm going to show you how to find the right podcasts that are going to be in good alignment with what you do. I'm going to help you know what to say when you send that email to make it sexy. Yes, sexy email that's going to hook that podcast host to make them lean in. I want to know what this doctor has to say. And then how to maximize your podcast appearance and make sure that you really leave that podcast host thinking, oh my gosh, that was amazing. So we know that podcasts, people listen to them. They love them, but not everyone is a podcast person. So we have to know that first. About 40% of my email list listens to this podcast. And I don't know why, because I think it's actually a pretty good podcast. But only about 40% of the people on my email list listen. So that's okay. But those 40% of you that are listening, it's the same in many other podcasts. There are podcasting people that really like them, but it doesn't matter because the podcast is just a vehicle, just like Facebook ads is a vehicle. Not everyone is on Facebook, but for the people that are on Facebook, the ads could reach them. Same with podcasts. The other thing that's nice about podcasting, especially if you can find the right podcast, is that the people are listening are already interested. Not the plumbers are interested in plumbing topics, right? We want to find the Hashimoto's podcast. And I'm going to use that as an example, but you could insert your expertise or your specialty or your niche or the people that you like to work with. But I'll just use Hashimoto's because it's a clear example and we all understand it. When you have something interesting and unique, I'm going to really emphasize that. You have something interesting and unique to share about a topic like Hashimoto's, someone else is going to be really interested to listen. You're not coming on just saying, I want to talk about women's health. Boring. No one wants to know. The other thing that's great about podcasts is you get what's called evergreen exposure. And evergreen means that the podcast stays. So you might record a podcast with someone, on the first of the month, but that podcast might get listened to hundreds or thousands of times over the next year or two. What other marketing can you do that's going to be relevant and listenable, in other words, consumable, 6 months, 9 months, a year after you create it? Podcasts are amazing. And it also allows you to create authentic connection with people because you know me better by listening to the podcast because you hear my tone of voice, you know a little bit more about me, I'm kind of sassy and, direct and very bold and blunt, but kind. You know that about me. So if you just tried to write all that in an email, it doesn't come across that way. Email is so flat. But when you can get on a podcast and you can just start talking really authentically with someone, just like you would talk with a patient, it builds credibility. It makes good connection. People think, I like that guy. I like that lady. I think I really like her. I want to work with her. And podcasts are actually quite time efficient. There's no big fancy funnels. You might want to send an email out to your audience to let them know that you're going to jump on a podcast. I think that's a great idea. But you don't have to do anything else. You just show up. You let the podcast host do all of that. So I want to just talk about a few objections that I think you might have. They might be rolling around in your head, and because you love me and you love the podcast, you're still listening, but you're thinking, yeah, no, this is not me. So let's just talk about it, shall we? The first myth is that you might be thinking that you're not big enough. In other words, you don't have a big enough following, or you're not fancy schmancy on Instagram or Facebook. And guess what? You don't need to be. I don't have thousands and thousands of followers, but I'm okay with that. But I have a lot to say. And I think that what I have to say is valuable and helpful. And so you don't have to have a big fancy following. You just have to have a message that's unique and different. Another thing you might be thinking is that you're just not polished enough. You listen to me talk and you're thinking, oh, well, I can't be articulate like Ronda. Well, I am not articulate. Let me tell you something. I am the queen of run-on sentences. Queen. I also am always tripping over my words. I'll say the wrong thing and correct myself mid-sentence, and I don't care because it's just who I am. If I tried to fit myself in a box where I had to be perfect all the time, you wouldn't like that because I would sound very robotic and I would be very intentional about every word that I say. And by doing so, you would leave me fast because it's not personal. It has no tone. It has no flavor. People want to know that you're just like them. And so it's okay if you trip over your words and you're not all the way polished. It's okay. But when you can talk about something that you have passion about, it comes right through. It's like me talking about business and marketing and clinical topics. I love it so much. And I'll just talk about it. So you just got to find something that you're really passionate about and then just share it. And then the third myth or thing that you might be thinking is that you don't have a subject right off the top of your head. Well, okay, fine. You may not, but I'm going to help you. So today we're going to talk about what I think are the best topics that are sexy to get on a podcast. So let's go. You ready? Here is what I think. When you get on a podcast, the topic that you choose has to be compelling. It has to be something that maybe the listener has never considered. Because what that does is it breaks through the noise of everyone else that comes on with healthy topics about living healthy and health and wellness. I'm so sick of that because it is so beige and boring. We can't be boring. You'll never stand out. No one will ever want to lean in and hear what you have to say. But when you have something that is I would argue that you almost want to make it a little controversial even. It makes people lean in. And they may not agree with you, but that's okay. We all have people that don't agree with us. It's fine. But that's what makes us unique, is that we can have different opinions. You want to be different. You want to say something different, not just a practitioner that's sharing general information. So here's some examples. I like to think about myth busting, or what is a common myth that people believe. A really good example is that reflux is too much acid. Now, I think a lot of people are kind of waking up that it actually means that there's not enough acid, stomach acid. But that's a good example. Or the myth that cholesterol should be below 180. Or could be the myth that once you have Hashimoto's, you just have to be on thyroid medication and you just have to be on it for the rest of your life. I think that's a great myth to bust. So you could say, look, why Hashimoto's is not a life sentence and why you don't have to be on thyroid hormone for life just because you have Hashimoto's. There is an answer and you can get off of it and live a perfectly healthy life. Now, for someone who has a podcast that talks to women about Hashimoto's, that may be newsflash to them. They may say, what? I've never heard this before. I think this is heresy. But in your email, which I'm going to give you the template for here shortly, in your email, you're going to say, well, hey, here's why I believe it. And you're going to say, I've been working with Hashimoto's patients, or whatever your niche is. I've been working with Hashimoto's patients for a long time, and I've seen it over and over and over and over again. That's my clinical experience. I've done it, I've seen it, and it works. I mean, you can't promise something that you haven't seen, but in the case of Hashimoto's, I could say that for myself. So you could say even something like, why normal lab results don't indicate that you're healthy. Or you could say, you don't have to give up coffee to fix your anxiety. You can have anxiety and have coffee, or you don't have to give up coffee for whatever reason. And you could say, like, for me, I'm not a bioidentical hormone person. So I could say why hormone replacement is not a good answer for menopause. Ooh, saucy. People gonna come for me in the comments. I don't care. It's just my opinion. I don't think bioidentical hormones are needed during menopause. I think we can fix the problem. We may have to use them temporarily, but I think we can fix the problem otherwise. And I've seen it happen many, 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 many times. So that's what I'm thinking for you, is find a myth that you can bust that is around your area of expertise. So if you can't think of it, I'll give you a little kind of a way to think about it, a framework. First of all, think about what is something that your patients are always really surprised about when you tell them. They go, really? Like for Hashimoto's, it might be that you talk about protomorphogens, or you might talk about Epstein-Barr or mono or something like that, right? So what is something that your patients are surprised about when you tell them? Or what's a belief that they have that you know is wrong and you're always having to kind of redirect them? What is something that conventional medicine often misdiagnoses, or they don't even address it at all? Like they just miss it entirely. Or what's a health trend that's trending right now that's making you crazy? Like the GLP right now at the time of this recording, the GLP drugs are all hot and heavy. People losing weight, but they're going to get stomach paralysis and thyroid cancer. We're going to see it. Their gallbladder is going to get screwed up. It's going to happen, and we're going to see some deaths from it. I'm telling you, because they're losing muscle and bone, not fat. But they look skinny. They're skinny fat people. That's something that's a little polarizing. People don't want to hear it. They want to lose the weight and they don't want to hear it. So find something that is like a health trend that you are absolutely against, and then create a headline, a hook, something like that. And AI will really, really help you with this. So if you have your AI, then do that. Use AI and say, hey, listen, I want to talk about X. Can you create 10 hooks for me, titles for this topic that are really compelling and sexy and a good hook? That's what you'll put in your podcast pitch that you'll send to the podcast host. So now, how do you find the right podcasts? Well, the first thing to do is to just go searching. You can go on Apple or Spotify or even Google Podcasts, and you can just type in your niche. So we'll go with Hashimoto's. You can just type in Hashimoto's, women with Hashimoto's, or incurable Hashimoto's, or thyroid disease. You would type in those terms and see what comes up. And there's probably a whole bunch of them. And the other thing you can do is there's a service. You do have to pay for it. I think you get so many free, but you could pay for it for a couple of months, 2 or 3 months, and just see what you get. It's called Podmatch. Podmatch.com. I'll put it in the show notes for you. Podmatch.com, just like it sounds, Podmatch. And there are podcasters that will go on there, and then you go on as a potential guest, and you can find the podcast and you can say, hey, here I am. Here's what I'd like to talk about. And you might even give them 3 options for the audience. Like you could talk about Hashimoto's, why it doesn't have to be a life sentence. You could talk about Hashimoto's and Epstein-Barr. And you could talk about Hashimoto's and stealth infections, which addresses the Epstein-Barr, but they don't know that. So there's 3 things that you could talk about. So you want to give them some options because they may or may not like the options, and that's okay. Another place you can go is called podcastguests.com. I have not used this one, but it also is pretty highly rated. Podcastguests.com, GUESTS.com. You can also look at, ask your peers. Have you been on a podcast before? What are your favorite podcasts? That kind of thing. And then you can also look for local podcasts. Very often that there are podcasts that are in your local area, especially if you're in a larger area, like a metropolitan area. There will be local podcasters that talk about local events in the area. I know, here, I'm in Seattle recording this, and there are several great local podcasts that all the locals listen to. So don't discount the fact that you could really have one that's right in your own backyard. And then you can reach out to your colleagues, out to peers and say, do you know of anyone who has a podcast that might be looking for a guest? But at the end of the day, you're going to write it down just 5 to 10. Okay. I just want you to make a list of them. Now you got your list and you're going to pitch the podcast. Before you start having an anxiety attack over here, I just want to tell you, this literally is a no risk. It's 0 risk because all you're doing is sending out an email. That's it. What's the worst thing that can happen? They delete it. No harm, no foul. It took you 10 minutes to write an email. And then you just send the next one. Or you send all 10 at the same time, separately, of course. But it's no harm, no foul. So I created a resource for you, by the way, and I'll talk about it at the end of the show. But I created a resource for you that has all of this information in it because it's too much for me to read it to you and then you have to try and stop, pull over the side of the road or get off the treadmill while you're listening to this podcast and write it all down. So I've put it all in a resource for you. You can go to rondanelson.com/podcast pitch. rondanelson.com/podcast pitch. And one of the things that will be in there are 2 email templates. The first email template is the one that you're going to reach out to the podcast host right away. And it says I'm going to read it. It says, I'm a wellness practitioner. My name is, and I help blank, your audience, with blank. I love your podcast, especially the episode about blank. Don't go spamming the podcast host. Go listen to a few of the episodes to see if it even resonates with you. You have your list of 5 or 10. Do your homework. You got to know a little bit about them because if you just spam them with an email that says, hey, I saw your podcast and I'd really like to be a guest, I would delete that. every time. If I get them and they don't even mention me or a prior podcast, it's an automatic delete. So, do your homework. But the rest of the email says, I'd love to share some insights about, and then you just say why Hashimoto's X, Y, and Z. I'm not selling anything. There's no hype, no fluff. I just really want to provide value to your audience about a topic that I don't think very many people know about. And so here are 3 kind of options around that I can talk about. But here's my website. Here's my Instagram. If you want to check me out, thanks for considering. I'd love to be a guest. That's all. Super easy. You're just saying, I just want to be helpful. And so you send that email off. And if they come back to you with, yes, wonderful, then you can have your anxiety attack and you'll DM me and I'll talk you out of the tree when that happens. Don't worry, I got you, friend. Oh, and I'm going to give you 2 emails too. I really like sending one and then sending a follow-up. And the follow-up is really short. It just says, hey, just following up on the previous email, etc. That's in the resource that I have for you. They're going to say yes. You're going to get on a podcast. And here's the cool part. You have, especially for those of you that have a virtual practice. Mm-hmm. And if you can find a local practice and you have a brick and mortar or a hybrid practice, that's even better because they live in your state of licensure. But if you're a health coach or somebody that isn't working underneath a license, then this is going to be perfect for you. So once you get your yes, I basically created in the resource, I've kind of given you like a little checklist at the end and the things that you need to do, which would include like, show up a few minutes early, make sure your Zoom works, make sure your background looks good. You don't have like some weird picture in the background, like be professional, make sure you don't have like a leaf of a tree growing out of the top of your head because of where you're positioned. Keep your answers simple, just like you would talk to a patient. Don't go down the medical jargon over explaining because people glaze over and they'll stop listening. When they feel like you can talk to them at their level, then you gain their respect. So just share, come prepared with maybe a story or 2. Don't give away any PHI, of course, but like some success stories about, well, I had this woman one time who blank. And then another thing is don't promote yourself unless the host asks you. And a good host will always ask, how can our listeners contact you? But don't go in guns a-blazing like my name is and my website. No, you're going to tune everybody out. You lead with value. You lead with authenticity. You come in with open arms and open hands, and I'm just here to give. And the more you give, the more that it'll come back. And then your podcast host is going to be just amazed. So you're going to be kind and forthcoming, and you're sharing lots of good information. And then the episode will be a huge hit, and I can promise you that you're going to get people that'll reach out to you. After the podcast is over, then you're going to want to share it. Of course, share it on your social media, share the link, tag the podcast host. I have all of this written down for you in the resource. So here's where you can find the resource, rondanelson.com/podcast pitch. Okay. rondanelson.com/podcast pitch. So here's what I want to leave you with. First of all, about maybe 6 or 7 years ago now, for a couple, 2 or 3 years in a row, I was invited to the Weston A. Price, the Nourishing Traditions Conference that's put on by Sally Fallon and Weston A. Price. And I went there and I talked about thyroid and Hashimoto's. And I would say even this many years later, about once, maybe every couple of months, I'll get someone that will reach out and they'll say, and they interviewed me on their podcast too. And so I have all that. It's like evergreen content. And I'll get someone who will reach out and say, I heard you on the Weston A. Price podcast or the Nourishing Traditions podcast, and I want to ask you a question about Hashimoto's. And will you work with me, or can you help me, or can you direct me? And sometimes I take them as patients and sometimes I don't. But this just proves my point. All these years later, and I still get people that reach out because of that podcast. I'm telling you, it is one of the most powerful ways for you to get your name out there. And it just takes you sending an email. That's all. I've given you everything you need in this resource, rondanelson.com/podcast pitch. So you don't need to be an influencer. You don't need a podcast. You don't need a big following or fancy reels or anything like that. You just have to have the courage to step up, raise your hand, send an email that says, hey, I have something that I think is valuable enough to share. And I'd love to share it with your audience. Your voice, what you have to say, your story, who you are, your successes that you've seen with patients. The world needs to hear it. People need to hear it. There are people out there who need what you have to offer. And when you just stay tucked in your little home office, if you're a virtual practice, or you're just in your brick and mortar and you're thinking, I just need to go do more marketing. I need to go this. I need to get on social media and be on there 73 times. I need this. No, this is a great option for you. I would really encourage you to step into it. So here's your challenge. This is what I'll leave you with this week. Here's your challenge. Go find those 5 to 10 podcasts. Write your email and hit send. Just hit the send button. You don't have anything to lose. That's it. Start with one. And you're going to be real nervous and you're going to think, does this email sound right? Is it okay? Is it pushy? Maybe my topics aren't good. Well, maybe they're going to say no. What if they never read it? What if they say it? What if they laugh? What if they read it? Do you hear all this? I know because I have that same chatter. But you don't have to worry about it. What do you have to lose? You don't know that person. Just send the email. What if they come back and they say, I'd love to have you on? That's when you're going to get anxiety. And then you're going to message me on Instagram and say, help, what do I do? And I'll help you. Don't worry. I got you. I haven't led you this far to let you go. So I am your BFF when it comes to business. So just do it. You got this. You've got this. All right, friend. So go get your resources, rondanelson.com/podcast pitch. It's a nice comprehensive Word doc and you can download it. It doesn't cost you anything. It's free for you. I just want you to be successful in your business and I want to help you get the word out there about what you do because the world needs to know about your superpower, what you do and how you help. All right, friends, take care. That's it for this week. I'll see you next week on the podcast.